So looking at this list of 50, and I'm just scanning through, you've got Steve Smith.
He's quite good at cricket.
You've got Joe Root.
Also good.
You've got Kane Williamson. They're the only three.
Kohli.
No, because Kohli's just retired.
Oh, okay.
So you've got
sorry.
the only. There's only 3 players currently playing, who are in the top 50. Quick question. You may not know the answer, but you probably be able to just kind of work it out. At what stage do you think the majority of these players? I mean, was there a time looking through when 8 or 9 of the best batters in the world were playing at the same time? I'm just having a look through.
You
must
would
have been
probably have early 2000s, because you would have Kumar, Callis, Steve Waugh, Sachin, Chandrapal, Lara, Hayden, Sehwag. Am I missing anyone else from that period? Dravid. Yeah, and Inzi. And in fact, Mohammad Yusuf's in the list as well, but he's 50th at the moment in the list. I just say at the moment because it's very flexible, my list.
Well, see, that leads me to my next question. So those 3 that I've mentioned, let's just say Kane Williamson's got another couple of years, possibly. He's got series in England next year. New Zealand are visiting Australia at the end of next year as well. If he's still playing then, he's got room to move. Steve Smith has got at least an Ashes in him, and maybe a touch more. Joe Root's probably got another. If all goes well, he's probably got another. He could have another 3 Ashes in him, potentially. Now, let's just say these guys achieve to the level they have done up to now, or even surpass that. Can you see, when you come to do this book again in maybe 5 years' time, can you see, and this is where the range comes in, I imagine, Joe Root, the range is 10 to 18, but he's listed at 14. I suppose what you're saying is if he continues like this and maybe excels a touch and has a successful series, scores that century, elusive century in Australia, he may actually leapfrog Herbert Sutcliffe and Kumar Sangakkara, or possibly even Wally Hammond, and find himself 10th in the list rather than where he is now, 14th.
I think you can make a claim that you can almost get him up those positions at the moment. I don't think he's got a great case to be above any of them, but I think you could make that. If he plays for another, what is he now, 37, 38? If he plays for another 4 years and is averaging plus 45 for all those years, you then get to something that we didn't really talk about before, but...
He's only 34.
Is he? He feels older.
So you're basing, essentially, the entirety of a lot of these, 47 of these players, the entirety of their careers,
and these,
to make your decision.
And even Virat, remember the book came out, I had finished the book a year before Virat had retired, right? So Virat,
that brings me on to another question then, because if that's the case, knowing what we know about Virat's last 12 months, does he actually drop down the list a bit?
He did drop down a little bit, but we didn't want to drop him. It wasn't even the last 12 months, it was like the last 5 years of his career. So when I started the book, I could tell you the people who moved the most during the book. Marnus Labuschagne, Babar Azam were both on the short list to make the list, and by the time I started writing it, neither of them could find a run and haven't found a run since. Kane Williamson, I rated him quite highly, and then the more you go through Kane Williamson's records, the more you find big gaps.
Yeah, I mean, his record against Australia is quite poor.
And England and India.
Either.
Yeah.
He has scored centuries in England.
He's made runs against South Africa, but it was when the B team, and it was in New Zealand. He hasn't made runs against South Africa or in South Africa. Kohli moved quite a bit, and then right at the last minute, I moved Root up about... What's he at 14? So he would have been closer to 18, I would have thought, when I first locked off the list, and we had to change it. So you'll like this on Kohli. When I started the book, I was like, oh God, everyone is going to abuse me because I've got Kohli too low, and everyone loves Kohli. And by the time the book was finished, I was getting letters from people going, I hope he's not in the top 50. He's terrible. And that's how much the narrative did. And I didn't want to get too much warped on form. I wanted it to think about if Joe Root retired tomorrow, Williamson or Smith or Kohli retired tomorrow. I think Smith still has a chance if he goes on a 4-year tear, and he scored 300s in a bunch of test matches recently. If he goes on another tear, he still has a chance of getting in that top 5, and Joe Root certainly has a chance of getting in the top 10. And I'd like to see Kane Williamson start to make more runs everywhere, right?
A question for for Jarrod, actually, it's not a question. It's from Fluffy3. He says Jarrod is a living Excel cricket spreadsheet. Yes, he is.
I should be said, I spent a lot of time on YouTube and finding, old cricket clips. There's some great stuff online if you want to find out about some of these old players. If you're looking for a random suggestion of an old player to watch, Peter May. It didn't make my list, but I love watching him bat. What
about the likes of, and I see Graham Pollock's in there, but what about the likes of Barry Richards or some of these players that didn't get to play? I mean, tell me about how you kind of worked around their omission or inclusion.
I interviewed Barry Richards for the book because he is one of the greatest living batters alive, and he loves talking about batting and himself. So the combination of those was great. I took him out of the book because I felt it was unfair to... I think there's a few players. There's a couple of New Zealand players, Stewie Dempster and Martin Donnelly. There's a couple of Indian players, the two VJs, who I didn't think I could put them in the book based on their test records. And so I felt that it was the same with Barry. And so I ultimately took Barry out. I think if you were doing the most talented batters, he probably might even get as high as in the top 10. Barry Richards said to me at one stage, with the straightest of faces, he goes, Jarrod, I could have averaged 70 in first-class cricket if I wanted to. And the thing is, I know, A, he probably could have, and B, he 100% believes that, right? But, he was great to talk about. But this is one thing I tried to get with Barry Richards was, but isn't getting bored and getting yourself out because you're bored also not the same? And he's like, I didn't want to be like Brian Lara. I didn't want to club baby seals all day. And I'm like, but that's why Brian Lara played some of the greatest innings of all time. So, yeah, I was quite harsh on the amount of tests. So I think the fewest amount of tests would be either Ranji or Grace. I'd have to go back and check. And I thought that the reason they didn't play more tests, Ranji didn't play more tests because of racism, and Grace didn't play more tests because he didn't think it was that important, Sean. And yet, he was still the best player in the 1880s when he'd already opened his medical practice up and wasn't as full-on into cricket as he had been before.
Now, I know growing up, Martin Crowe was one of your favourite players. So how did you go about researching him? I mean, who did you speak to about Martin Crowe who told you what you didn't know about Martin Crowe?
I was lucky enough to be friends with Martin Crowe for a little while before he passed away. So he's not interviewed in the book, but I think he's probably one of the louder voices in my head when I was writing the book. So I talked to him quite a bit. But I also, Jeremy Coney is, of course, someone else who... So I spent a lot of time talking to Jeremy Coney about different players. Again, this was more... what would we say? Over a glass of Jeremy's favourite red. We shared a lot of flats and things when we've been touring around together. And so I talked quite a bit to him. But I tried to find two players from every generation. So I went all the way back to the 1940s to find a player from Yorkshire called Brian Stott, who played with Hutton and against Barrington and all those guys. Talked to a guy called Bob Knocker White, who actually played up here and is a legend up in Nottingham, to talk about all the county players that he played against. Then it was Bumble and Ian Chappell. So I didn't just talk to the younger players. I tried to look at players from as far back as I could find. I think Brian Stott might be in his 90s, all the way through to today. And then also, I didn't just talk to great players. Obviously, I talked to Lara and A.B. de Villiers and Kumar Sangakkara and Rahul Dravid, but I also talked to players like Jimmy Adams, Chris Rogers, Nasser Hussain, Ross Taylor, who were all very good players, but they also know, they were very honest about the difference between their level and the guys who ultimately made this book.
So which country then punches above its weight in terms of producing the greatest, and which country maybe could do 6 out of 10, must try harder?
I would say West Indies is probably the country that has the most greats. I'm trying to think of off the top of my head. There's Viv, Lara, Sobers, Greenwich, and then you have Rowan Kanhai, Frank Worrell, and the two W's as well.
Yeah,
and Clive Lloyd.
There's 11 of the 50.
Yeah, we must have missed some. There must have been a couple of others that I missed in there as well.
Yeah, Clyde Walcott, Everton Weeks, Frank Worrell, Rowan Kanhai.
Yeah, so they're at the back end. Then you've got
Clive Lloyd, Shiv.
Oh, Shiv was another one we missed.
Gordon Greenwich.
Yeah, so I think they're above it.
George Headley.
I took a lot of Australians out of the list, and I'll tell you why. It's because Australians generally average like 60 at home and 40 away.
Yeah.
And I got... when you get nitpicky about greatness, there's so many guys. It's like Bill Podsford. It was Michael Clark, David Warner. I was like, I'm sorry, guys. Everyone else is averaging, 50 and home and away, and you're not. And so you get quite nitpicky. But I'd say that the team that struggled the most, considering how good their batting pitches are, I think Pakistan probably, their batting hasn't been as good as it should have been. And I think the only Test nation that isn't there is Bangladesh, Ireland, and Afghanistan, and of course Zimbabwe have Andy Flower, who's sort of, I think he's about 35 on the list, I think, or 38, somewhere around there.
Yep, he is. He's above KP.
I love talking to people about Andy Flower because I didn't talk to one batter who didn't have great stories about him. Ed told me before he's a terrible person, didn't like him, but everyone, Ed was saying before, just literally, overrated. Why is he in the book? He said Grant Flower was the one.
VK says, Jarrod, when are you going to do top 50 cricketers of all time?
I haven't done the bowlers book yet. So the problem with bowlers, so Ed was asking about this before, is it's possible to work out the difference between a number 6 and an opening batter, mathematically. Not that the whole book is based on stats, but mathematically it's possible. It's really hard with spinners, and it's specifically hard with spinners like Shane Warne and Nathan Lyon and Dan Vettori, when quite often they're the only spinner in the game, and I can't compare them to anyone else in that game. So bowlers is really tricky. If I can get bowlers and it comes out as the way that I want it to, I'll probably will do the top 50 cricketers of all time. Then we can have a proper argument about whether Sobers should be ahead of Bradman.
Of these batters, how many of them will be in the top 50 bowlers?
None. Sobers is not in the top 50 bowlers of all time.
So there isn't one. Who would come closest, do you think? You haven't written the book yet, but Kallis, Sobers,
Imran Khan, but he's not in the top 50 batters. Yeah, I think I've actually done, if you want to know, I've done a big piece on Garfield Sobers recently. He is, I think, even though he's got a worse bowling average than Jarrod Kallis, I think he's definitely a better bowler than Kallis. So yeah, he would be the best bowler. If you're looking at the best all-rounder, I suppose that's probably Flower, isn't it? Because he kept, I think, every time. Whereas all the other guys didn't keep all the time.
Do you think Sunil Gavaskar gets the love that he should do outside of India?
I don't think he gets it inside India.
Really?
Yeah, I think what happens is he was a great player when we didn't have many TV cameras at the ground, right?
Is he known more from his broadcasting?
Yeah.
Than people have kind of forgotten what he did with the bat.
I think
a bit.
He wasn't the most exciting player to watch, and that's the same with Hutton and Barrington, and Boycott, as you mentioned before. But I think if you look at Gavaskar, his record is ridiculous. We did the advanced stats. Gavaskar is the only other player in Test cricket history to average more than 100 against spin. Do you want to know who the first one is?
Go on.
Bradman, right? So he's as good as Bradman against spin, and he did it in much tougher conditions than Bradman. Although, to be fair, Bradman did it on uncovered wickets, so spinners were still in touch. I think what happens with Gavaskar is he retires, and then straight away Sachin Tendulkar comes in. Then you've got Rahul Dravid. Then you've got Virender Sehwag. Then you've got Rohit Sharma and Virat Kohli and all these other players, and he's forgotten. And as you said, it's a bit like the Richie Benaud thing. People don't really remember how good a cricketer Richie Benaud was because he becomes a commentator. And there's also weird things with Gavaskar, like the 39 not out in a one-day game. Do you know what I mean? You're talking about a player at one stage, Don, who literally decided in a game he was going to bat left-handed. Right? Because he was like, the ball's spinning too much. I'm just going to bat left-handed. He was a freak of nature, Sunil Gavaskar.
He's an early Dermot Reeve.
I'm not sure if either of them would be happy with that.
But it's true, though, isn't it? I mean, the Wisden named their 5 cricketers of the century, and obviously Shane Warne was in it, and so was Jack Hobbs, so was Don Bradman, so was Sachin. But Sunil in your list comes above Viv Richards, who was also one of those. Is there another, we were just dazzled by some of those players. He just did a job better, but just didn't. We just didn't enjoy watching it as much.
I think Viv Richards gets a huge boost over a lot of other players from his era because he played so much in Australia when there was great cameras and footage of him, and also, is there not a bit of format bleed? This is a test book, right? And I think that, in fact, I had an Indian contact me the other day, and he was like, Gavaskar wasn't a better test player than Viv Richards. And I said, well, if you look at their whole career, Viv Richards actually has a bit of a downturn towards the end of his career. I think one of the reasons I had him so high in the list is because people were actually terrified of bowling to him. And he was a one-man batting attack, and he changed the way that teams went about it. you still couldn't bowl spin to Sunil Gavaskar, and he was still a very good player of the moving ball as well. So I think there's a little bit of the legacy. I mean, if you were going to pick a player to be, John, you're not going to pick Gavaskar or Hutton over Viv Richards, are you? But you might not pick Andy Flower over Adam Gilchrist as well. Doesn't mean that Andy Flower isn't the better test batter.
Umang Jain says, did Jarrod ever consider Chris Gale in the top 100 batsmen of all time?
He's in my top 100 test batters of all time, yes.
Is he?
He made a lot of runs in Australia. He made 2 test triple hundreds. He's got an average of about 42 opening the batting in test cricket. He's in the top 100. The problem is a couple of places where he just doesn't make any runs at all. Maybe England might be one of them. I can't remember now. So yeah, he didn't quite make the list. But yeah, he was on the fringes of the long list. I think we'd say.
Jarrod, thank you so much. If you are interested in the art of batting, then go and buy it. The Craft of Cricket's Greatest Run Scorers, compiled by Jarrod Kimber. Absolutely brilliant stuff. Oh, before you go though, VK says, Jarrod, if you would have to name the top 5 cricketers post 2010, who would they be? And while you answer that question, Andrew McKenna is going to get back into the hot seat, and I think he's going to be joined by Ed Rainsford as well. But thanks for joining us. And as I say, the art of batting from Jarrod Kimber. Jarrod, over to you.
So since 2010, you said. So I'd go Smith, Bumrah. Who else would I have up there? Root, Smith, Bumrah, Root. He made batters. Oh, okay. I don't know. Read the book. I don't know what the order is. You would have De Villiers, Kohli, Smith, Root, and Williamson, I think, if it's just batters. And yeah, Bumrah I would obviously put up there, and Cummins I'd have quite high as well. Hello, Macca.
Good afternoon, Jarrod.
Am I on, or do I go?
You can go.
Hey.
But there you go. Jarrod Kimber's The Art of Batting, and judging by the feel of the quality of the paper, it'll set light quite easily as well, if you're ever short of kindling. We might dip into that in the